now I'm going to talk a little bit about things to consider when choosing a publisher, because this is a very important decision. One of the first things you should think about is the reputation of the publisher. You should bear in mind that the negative experiences of one of your disgruntled colleagues may not represent what is typical at a press. Things can and do go awry in publishing, and people are not always happy with what happens. It's not necessarily the case that the publisher was at fault. You're getting one side of the story. That said, if all of your colleagues say, don't go there, there's usually a reason there. But, you know, some publishers can have good reputations undeservedly, and some can have poor reputations deservedly. You need to think about, one final word on that. In terms of reputation, getting back to what I said earlier, you need to think about and try to find out what the reputation of this publisher is in your department. That matters a lot. You need to ask your colleagues, the department chair, anyone you know, and make sure that if they do privilege some publishers over the other, unfairly or not, you need to bear that in mind. Another thing I think you should think about if you're looking for a publisher is what I would call a publisher that has a subject specialization versus one that publishes in many, many disciplines and none very extensively. I think an author should publish a book in an area with a publisher who is active in that area. They could have a long history of publishing books in, for example, political science, and that's important. They could be a new up-and-comer who's really moving into this area. But it's very important to have other books like yours on the list. It helps the publisher because they have other product to market with this. So they're not sort of making forays for the first time into a discipline. They have a track record. People come to them because they know they publish in this area. So you don't really want your book to be what we would call an orphan on a publishing list. It happens sometimes. Sometimes orphans are, they're orphans because there are no other books in that area. And hopefully you will find a publisher who will take that into consideration. In terms of size, there are publishers at this table, in fact, I think you have sort of, McGill Queens is one of the largest publishers. We're a medium size, and Wilfrid Laurier is smaller. Size, I don't want to use that old...
Go ahead, Randy.
Size doesn't matter, or size might matter. Let me put it that way, size might matter. Some large publishers are great, and they devote a lot of energy to all the titles in their list, and they can really do a fantastic job. Other publishers devote all the marketing and production energy to the front list titles, and everything else languishes. And so your book can take forever. It will appear with a litany of errors and a hideous cover. Some small publishers are fantastic because they focus in a particular area, they're known, and that's really a benefit. Other small publishers lack resources, and they can't really do an effective job. So it's not the size, it's the other books on there, it's whether they can do a good job with your book in particular. Again, talk to the people in your discipline, talk to your colleagues. Speed is something that obviously authors are always concerned about. I think without exception, regardless of how long it's taken an author to get their manuscript to me, they want it published yesterday once it's in my hands. Without exception, it's always the case. And rightly so, you've spent a lot of time working on this, you want it out so all your numerous fans can buy and worship at the altar of your book. I think you should first of all be able to get straight answers and honest answers from a publisher about how long it's going to take. I think your book should be published as soon as possible, subject to very important steps that take place in the production process. Things take time for a reason. I was a production editor for a number of years. If you start cutting corners on copy editing, proofreading, typesetting, design, layout, all of these things, indexing, you will have a very inferior product, and it will get noticed. I'm sure you've all read reviews, book reviews, that comment on how the book looked as if it hadn't passed through the hands of a professional editor. Publishers hate that. We all get them occasionally, even when they have passed through the hands of an editor, and it's just errors can creep in. But don't privilege speed at the expense of the things that take the time. I've met with lots of authors who, because they've had pressures in terms of tenure and promotion, they've gone with the publisher who can get it out in 5 or 6 months. And most of the time they're not happy with the result. And not only are they not happy with the result, but it's potentially career damaging, right? If you send it out and it doesn't get a rigorous peer review and every review of your book, published review of your book, gets hammered, that's not good for your career. You want those reviews, if they're going to come, to happen in the sort of confidence of peer review. You want the negative reviews to happen there. That's where you should be able to go away and make it a better book. Something else, again, related to this is what I just call editorial production factors. Not all publishers are the same. Some offer more, and some offer less, and some have good reputations and some have bad reputations. And by this I mean, will the book be copy edited? I noticed an ad in the book displayed today about, someone talking about how they don't subject their manuscripts to radical copy editing. That's just another way of saying we'll publish your dissertation in unrevised form. You don't want that. You want someone who's going to go through. Copy editor will make you sound smarter than you are and your book better. So don't cut those corners because it'll haunt you in the long run. There'll be typos, various things. The final thing I think you should think about is you need to recognize that publishing a book is a lengthy process, and it will last for many years, and it will happen perhaps in the beginning. You'll go to a conference like this and you'll meet with an editor and you'll talk to them about your project, and then over the course of a few years, you'll have some various sort of levels of engagement and interaction. That editor might read your manuscript. Then it'll finally be approved and go in-house, and then it gets marketed. And so it's going to last a long time. You're going to have a relationship with this group of people for a long time. So you want it to be open and honest. You want to be able to get straight answers. Even if you don't like the answer, you should be able to get it. And recognize that we're all working for the same thing. We want your book to be successful. There are limits. When those royalty checks come in and they're exceedingly modest, recognize that's just the nature of the business, and you should be prepared for the notion of modest royalties. You're not putting that on your applying for a mortgage. Revenues from my academic book. You should know that that's not going to happen for most of you. So that's kind of the final thing I would say.